Oh, hello there. What made you come out on a stormy night like tonight? Oh, really? You just want to hear some more stories told by me? Well, I'm touched. I hope you enjoy them. Our first story tonight is a little bit different. It involves the OP's friend. He says, "This happened to my friend."
At 16, I was chosen to lead a group of young freshmen and assist instructors at an adventure camp in Sembawang. I wasn't fond of the location, as it was near the infamous Kampong Wak Hassan, which has experienced common sightings of Pontianacs, which is a type of female vampire, and Pokongs, which is what we call ghost here in Singapore. The beach nearby is also a hotspot for people to dispose of spiritual items. Before our night walk, we had a briefing. Each group would have to walk through a dense forest, passing by the beach, a mosque, and an old gate. The leaders had to stay at chosen positions along the route to ensure students wouldn't stray. When night fell, I took up my spot near the beach and waited for the first group to pass. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw someone at the beach, but paid no attention to them. Soon, the presence came closer to me. I heard small chants, a dead giveaway that someone was throwing away something spiritual. After the person left, I felt someone's hand grab me. I was shocked but didn't dare to turn around. Thankfully, a group of students finally walked past my rote and all was back to normal. During the debrief, everyone said they felt someone standing next to them even when they were alone. Just like me, no one dared to look back. Post-experience, I came down with a fever and a mysterious mark temporarily appeared on my hand.
Wow. So everyone had the same experience as you did? That's some hardcore validation right there. Although, I will admit, I'm a little disappointed. I mean, I was kinda hoping for a vampire to show up. Next, we have one from a young lady that is having the most horrifying of experiences. And because of these experiences, she says, "I need help."
So I need help, as in the title. I don't know whether I'm facing a mimic, a doppelganger, or a skinwalker. My partner, grandmother, and I live in this little house in Australia. We are right behind a railway line, which used to be a river, and there has been multiple paranormal encounters we have had. Such as footsteps and voices in the backyard, visual sightings of my passed-away grandfather, a young girl in a long white dress, and a shadow man that is under the house, which stays under my grandmother's room. My partner has seen shadow figures in our backyard, and they would disappear in front of him. It constantly sets off our dog. Recently, in the past 2 to 4 months, my partner and I have been seeing and dealing with this one entity which copies mine and his voice. He has answered it a few times by accident, but it will mostly copy my voice and call him when nobody else is home and I'm at work. I've seen giant claws coming across the fridge in the kitchen and been getting scratches and cuts randomly on my body. I have seen it but haven't really heard it. A few weeks ago, I saw this entity looking like my partner come up the hallway into the bathroom and back to the kitchen. Then my actual partner started talking to me from the window while I'm looking at him in the kitchen. And just tonight the same entity came into my room, stood at the side of my bed looking at me, then walked out. Usually when my partner comes in the room, he'll say something like, "Hey my honey," or "Hey my baby," but this was just unsettling because he didn't say anything. Then the figure just walked out. About 30 seconds later my partner came out of the bathroom and into the bedroom. If anybody knows what we are dealing with, please let me know, as we are getting really uneasy with it. P.S. We think the Shadow Man is connected to a piece of the old Sydney prison that my grandmother has.
Well, to start with, if you truly think that the Shadow Man is connected to an old relic, then get rid of the relic. Perhaps they are all connected. It may not fix everything, but it could be a start. Geez, it looks like some weird stuff must be happening down under, because we have 2 back-to-back stories from there. This one happens in December 2016, when they receive the phone call.
I lived in rural Victoria, Australia with my mum and my older brother who is 5 years older than me. For context, my mother's side is Italian and my nonna is very superstitious. Needle and thread to determine the sex of your future children. I've had this done multiple times, 2 girls and a boy. It would correctly identify my auntie's children who were already born, and the needle would be still on any man who would try. It's not supposed to work on men. As well as the bowl full of water and dropping oil into it to read curses and jealousy. When I was 14-ish, one of my mother's best friends, Jen, passed of a heart attack. I had known this woman my whole life and we used to live down the road when my parents were together. Our family was heartbroken and felt negatively towards the husband as Jen had a heart attack late at night in bed, next to her husband, to which he woke up and ran to the neighbors for help before returning and started doing chest compressions while she was still in bed. Even at 15, I knew you needed a hard surface for chest compressions to be useful. Jen unfortunately passed away in that bed the 12th of December 15. About a year later, myself, Mum and my brother were sitting at our kitchen table after finishing dinner and my mum was recounting ghost stories. Faces in the window of her bedroom, her grandfather walking the hallways at night when my mother got up to use the bathroom. Keep in mind that she grew up on a farm with at least 2 long paddocks separating the house from the road and had dogs that barked at anything. My mother mentioned that she could still feel Jen with her in her heart, and we all started recounting fond memories of Jen. Suddenly, the light only above our heads started to flicker and went out briefly. The light of the TV with MASH on mute stayed on, as well as our Christmas tree. We are used to the power cutting out for short periods of time on stormy nights, but this night was in the midst of summer and eerily quiet despite our house being next to a truck route. It also so happened to be the week of the 1-year anniversary of Jen's passing. Our family was silent during the seconds the light flickered out and continued to be silent when the light came back on. The kitchen felt breezy, and I could see we all had goosebumps. My brother and I began to laugh the whole thing off, and that is when my mother's phone rang. She pointed the phone screen at us and my brother, and I stilled. It was Jen's number. My mother answered the phone, and after a minute of silence, the call was ended. We all sat in silence for minutes until my brother and I pushed out of our seats saying, "Nope, nope, nope," repeatedly. My mother clutched the phone to her chest and cried silently. My brother and I were pretty freaked out, so we stayed with Mum in the lounge. That was the first and only night our family watched MASH.
Wait one damn minute. Do you all have a problem with MASH? It was an awesome show. Well, I can tell just by looking that you all probably have had enough. I mean, your hands are shaking so much that you can't even hold your water bottle without spilling it. What? You actually want another one? Well, if you're sure you can take it, but don't say I didn't warn you. Our last one is a story that was told to the OP by her aunt. It's called The Unrestful and Angry Child.
This is a story my aunt has told me about 2 friends of hers. Let's call them Sarah and Anne. Sarah had recently moved to the big city and bought an old house there. The house was built right after WW2 ended and had many people living there since then. The exterior of the house looked old, however inside the house had been renewed a couple of times, however it still had early 2000s vibe to it. The only place that was mostly left untouched was the basement. So Sarah had moved in and lived there for 3 weeks already, however each night she had an uneasy feeling when going to sleep, almost like she wasn't alone there. She would sometimes hear footsteps in the 2nd floor, but there was no one there. With each night, she grew more and more unrestful, and each day she was more and more tired at work. On the 3rd weekend Anne came to visit. She was going to catch a flight on Sunday and wanted to stay the night at Sarah's house before leaving. Sarah showed in the guest room she was going to stay in. Sarah's room was on the main floor, while the guest room was on the 2nd. They spent the day shopping and eating at a fancy restaurant, before drinking a glass of wine before bed. They had agreed to have breakfast before the plane took off. Anne went to her room and fell asleep. In the middle of the night she woke up, as the door to her room suddenly was open. She thought it was weird and closed it. The door opened again, but this time she couldn't be bothered to close it. Then as she fell asleep again but was woken up when someone sat on her bed. She opened her eyes to a girl sitting at the edge of her bed. She was blonde, similar to Sarah, and thought that it was Sarah messing with her. And tried talking, but no answer. She even tried looking at the face, but each time she tried it, the girl turned her head so that and wasn't able to see the face. Frustrated, and went back to sleep and slept until her alarm went off. She woke up and walked downstairs, where Sarah was making breakfast, and asked her if she was messing with her the last night, but Sarah said that she had slept the whole night. A chill went down both of their spines as they realized they weren't alone there. Sarah drove into the airport and went back home. Each time she stepped inside the house she felt a chill go down her spine, and she was getting scared. She called her friends and family to ask for advice, but nothing worked. She called her old aunt, and she came up with a solution. Her aunt said, "You should call Marit." In the town where Sarah came from, there lived a woman, let's call her Marit. Marit was not a normal person, as it was said that she could see things that no one else could see and talk to the unalive as well as the nature spirits. Sarah hesitated but realized that this was her last chance. She called Marit, and Marit answered. Just hearing her voice made all the bad energy in the house vanish. And explained the situation to Marit. Silence. Then Marit began talking. This house belonged to a family after the war, and the family had a young girl. One day the girl fell ill and died shortly after. The family moved because they couldn't handle living in the house where their daughter died. However, they left something for her. A small crown made of silver. They hid the crown in the basement so that no one finds it. The crown is in a small box behind the shelves on the northeastern corner. You are going to take the crown and throw it in the trash. Now keep in mind that the girl is going to be furious, however it has to be done, not only so that you can live peacefully, but also so that the girl can finally rest. Once she ended the call with Marit, she was a bit creeped out. How did Marit know about all this? She was terrified, so she called her uncle, let's call him Avla. She asked Avla if he could come help her search for the crown. Avla came by and they went into the basement. Sure enough, behind the shelves was a box, and inside the box was a silver crown fit for a young girl. Avla picked up the crown with his left hand, carried it outside and threw it in the trash. The day went by, and Sarah was getting ready to sleep. But just as Marit had said, the girl was angry. Sarah heard the footsteps on the second floor. However, instead of the light steps she normally heard, this time the girl was stomping back and forth, while slamming the doors. Sarah was terrified and didn't sleep at all during that night. The next day, Avla calls her. Avla was a mechanic, however something had happened to him. His left arm hurt, and he wasn't able to lift it at all. He had gone to the doctors, but they didn't find anything. He said to Sarah, "You have to call Marit again, that girl has cursed me." Sarah called Marit again, and she agreed to help her. However, both Sarah and Avla had to come get her. So they drove to their hometown to pick up Marit and then drove back to Sarah's house. They walked inside the house, and Marit stopped. She is angry, I can hear her cursing up there. They made a plan. Marit was going to go upstairs and talk to the ghost, trying to get her to leave. Sarah and Avla were going to turn off all the lights, except for the small light above the kitchen sink, and wait for Marit's signal. So they turned off the lights and sat down. Marit climbed the stairs and went into the darkness. Up there, she started talking. However, the language she talked was unknown. It wasn't Sami or Norwegian, not Finnish or German, not even Russian. It was a language that they had never heard before. Marit was getting louder and louder, and they could hear that there was a huge discussion up there. Then suddenly everything went dark. The light in the kitchen went out. Then they heard Marit yell, "Open the front door and hide behind the counter." Sarah ran and opened the door and quickly hid behind the kitchen counter along with Avla. They could hear Marit walking down the stairs, but she wasn't alone. For each step she took, she could hear another set of steps behind her, but these were similar to the ones she had heard before. They were now on the main floor. Marit kept talking the unknown language and kept slowly walking towards the door. Sarah hid behind the counter, but she saw as Marit walked past them, and she wasn't alone. A young girl with blonde hair was walking alongside her towards the door. As Marit walked outside, the door slammed shut, the light came back on, and the eerie feeling just vanished. Marit came back in and said that it was done, the girl had now left this realm. They drove Marit back home and spent the night in the town. The next day something amazing had happened. The pain in Avla's arm was gone, and he could move it again. Everything was back to normal. Since then, Sarah didn't hear anything inside the house again, however she decided to sell it just in case and buy a newer house, just in case the girl ever decided to take revenge for throwing her out.
Well, that's a hell of a thing, now ain't it? So, how was that? Did those stories satisfy your need to get scared? Good, then it's time for you to go. But before you leave, could you do me a little favor? Could you please hit like, subscribe, and sharing this video? It'll really help us keep the ghosts at bay. And of course, if any of you have a story to share, or have any thoughts about our stories tonight, or if you have any suggestions on subjects for upcoming videos, or even just general thoughts about my channel, then by all means, drop me a line in the comments. But I do want to thank you for stopping by, and I hope the stories we told won't be giving you too many bad dreams. But if they do, then maybe you shouldn't run from them. After all, sometimes it's better to embrace your nightmares.